back. Thanks again for joining us. For the next round of questioning, we are also going to kick it back to our panel. We have some candidate-specific questions we're going to roll with next. Rob Genest, you want to take us?
Mr. Ehrhard, as an anti-tax small government candidate, how would you cut the size of state government?
That's a good question. I do believe that the government spends too much, the government taxes too much, and that when people keep the money they earn, economies thrive and families prosper. Our budget has, as I said before, gone up. When Deval Patrick's first budget was $26 billion approximately, that was 8 years ago. This budget is $36 billion. That is a 38% increase in 8 years. At the same time, local aid has gone down 40%. The one place people don't mind spending taxpayer dollars is local aid and school aid, because it helps their communities directly. So when the question to me is, well, you want to cut taxes, how do you expect to cut spending?
Where do you look?
I mean, obviously you got a big budget. We could sit here for hours going line by line by line, but we have to talk generalities. But the generalities do provide insight into specifics. Half of our budget goes to mass health, medical care, and entitlement welfare transfers. Half of it. Over $12 billion goes to mass health alone. In that program, you can find a few $1 billion itself in cuts. Why? It is a public sector program which we just know is fraught with waste. What I would like to see our government do is bring in private sector healthcare employees to revamp the system. I mean, can you imagine if Harvard Pilgrim Health or Tufts Medical spent over $200 million on a health website that didn't work? That would never happen. It's inconceivable because there are consequences to shareholders and to policyholders. We spent $200 million on that website and it still doesn't work, and not one lawsuit has been filed. Not one lawsuit. And that's just a failure of leadership. So there's $200 million right there. Governor Patrick just spent $11 million on his office when it was supposed to be a $9 million budget. The House has appropriated $20 million to renovate the House chamber with no appraisals, no specs, no contractors. As Jim Lyons, state representative from Andover, and Mark Lombardo have said, they provide a list of $1.2 billion, along with Tank the Gas Tax Group, gave a list of $1.2 billion where money just went down a hole. EBT, mass health, welfare fraud. The fact of the matter is, to find the funds to increase local aid and cut taxes, all you do is what any business does. You look at the budget, you find the efficiencies. And where there is inefficiencies, you revamp those programs. You could easily find in a $36 billion budget, $4 to $5 billion easily, which can go back to local aid, can go back to school aid. Easily done. Now we can go line by line, but it's inconceivable when a budget goes up by 38% in 8 years, and the local communities see no meaningful effect in that increase, then we know the budget is replete with pork and inefficiencies. All it requires is a state senator who can begin that conversation. Right now there is no opposition on Beacon Hill, none of any significance. I have shown myself historically, from my time in Sturbridge as a prominent bankruptcy lawyer and on the Tantasco School Committee, of being a leader. I don't always win my battles, but I say enough. Let's look at this again. And eventually you build allies. Eventually you build a coalition and you begin that change. We need two-party government. This district and this election is where it can begin.
And Mr. Valanzola, any reaction?
Beacon Hill's first reaction anytime there's revenue concerns are, well, let's raise taxes. That's always the first response. There are never discussions about how we make a more efficient and thrifty government, and I think there are ways to do that. My campaign over the coming days will be releasing a number of reforms that we believe will save us between $800 million and about $1 billion. Those include EBT reform. We've seen right there the ability to cut about $50 million in waste from some simple reforms in the EBT program. Relative to our decision in the Commonwealth to throw out our very successful healthcare model and adapt Obamacare, we could save about $100 to $150 million there via the website issues and a number of other debacles that have existed from us, throwing out our successful program and adopting an untested model. If you look at the Boston Convention Center project, which is slated to be several $billions over the next couple couple of years.
Massive, yeah.
About $50 million this coming year in cost. A convention center expansion project, by the way, that the hotels in the city have said don't do, because we don't have enough beds to house people if they're going to come into the city for conventions. So there are a number of areas that I think we can be thrifty and we can reform state government in an effort to make sure that we take that money and we reinvest it in better ways that are more helpful to the people of the Commonwealth. And I think if we get serious about building consensus and identifying those issues, that we can solve them. And I'm willing to do that.
I would just add to that is the reason I think this state Senate seat, that we're talking about right now is so important as an election. And quite frankly, if you talk to activists in Boston, this is a really radar-focused seat. It's because in order to bring back two-party government, we need, as a party, to win the seats that Republicans can win. And as a state senator from this district, as a Republican, I think you have a responsibility to be that voice of opposition. We talk about consensus. We can talk about bridge building, and that's important. It has to be done. As a state senator, you need to at least say, this is where I stand. I'm not going to change my vote just to curry favor with leadership, you see? And that's why, in order to bring spending cuts, we can talk about the convention center, but some Republican from Worcester County says, I don't want a convention center. They don't care. But you have to start building those coalitions among the willing. Work with the House leadership. Work with Jim Lyons, Lombardo. Work with Don Hummus and other Republicans to try and build those blocks of opposition. And those blocks of opposition build to coalition building. So I think this election is very important. And I think this primary is very important. So we can make a statement of where are we as a party going and where are we as a district going to be going.
All right.
I just want to be clear on one point there.
Yes.
I'm not really interested in what activists in Boston think. I'm interested in what the people of the territory that I'm looking to represent think. And those folks are coming to me in droves and saying, listen, we were promised property tax relief 8 years ago. Property tax has gone sky high. So we get back to the question about what can we do relative to taxes. Increasing local aid will be a simple way for us to reduce property taxes and ensure that the people in the district that we're looking to represent have the ability to put more money aside for vacations, for their kids' college, and save for the future.
All right, so cutting waste, taking a private sector approach to some of the public sector problems, I understand. And we are going to kick it back to our panel for the next question. Kari and Jerry of New England Public Radio.
Thank you. Mr. Valanzola, you've made education funding a centerpiece of your campaign so far. What steps can the state take to ensure that public schools get the funding they need to be successful and to help students compete in the 21st century?
I'm glad you brought us to education, because you're right, it has been one of the centerpieces of my campaign. In fact, it's one of the top 3 pillars of the campaign. And it's my experience as the product of the public school system, but also my experience as chairman of a regional school district, one of the largest regional school districts in our state Senate district. We need to be serious about ensuring that Chapter 70 funding, which is the funding to our public schools, is a top priority every single year. Chapter 70 money has essentially been level funded. That's a cut. When you look at the increased costs to run a school, when you look at the increased costs of health insurance and all of the contractual obligations that school districts are forced upon, a level funded Chapter 70 number is essentially a cut upon the district. Then you put that in the context of changes to our curriculum. The adoption of this Common Core program, which was a federal mandate that was sent upon us, that we already know from firsthand experience is less rigorous than our current MCAS standards, but will cost us more money. That's a concern for me, and that's going to cost the districts more money. There was a recent decision in this gun control bill that was passed to mandate school resource officers in all of our school districts. The Tantascwa Union is actually 6 districts in one. Are we now supposed to fund 6 police officers? I think we can have a legitimate conversation about the need for school resource officers, but the reality of it is the mandates that keep coming from Beacon Hill are taking less and less money from the classroom and diverting that money elsewhere, and I have major concerns about that. So I'm all about ensuring that we protect public schools, but that also means we fund regional transportation at 100%, which is what the legal limit requires, not 45%, not 55%, 100%, that we're going to incentivize schools to regionalize, and we give them a carrot in order for them to regionalize, that we actually come through with the funding that we've promised them. There's a way to do it, but it has to be a priority. And this governor and this legislature has not made local aid and Chapter 70 money a priority in each and every budget. Jim has indicated a few times in this discussion, and I agree, that we've seen a state budget increase by $10 billion over the last 8 years.
Right.
But yet we've cut local aid 40% and we've level funded Chapter 70. That doesn't show me prioritization for education. So we need to be more serious about making those the top priorities in every budget.
And just quickly on the topic of education, part of the discussion of this has been, the role charter schools play and public funding. Some people see it as a great alternative to help fund, to give parents another option for their children. And other people have seen it as a vacuum, perhaps, pulling money away from the public education system. Just briefly, what's your take on this?
I'm very familiar with the topic of school choice, and I'm a big proponent of school choice. As chair of the Tantasco Regional School District, I've seen firsthand when you have a good, solid product that parents and kids want to send their kids into, that you can really create a prominent district that will be the leader in education. And we've done that at Tantasco. But having now campaigned throughout this 28-town district, and having been on the other side of the coin and seeing the districts that are seeing their kids' school choiced out, I see the gap that it's creating in a number of our school districts. And the gap exists because we have not funded Chapter 70 and regional transportation at the levels we need to ensure we fund so that every school district can be competitive. So school choice is a good thing, and I support it. But we also need to make sure that we're setting every school district up to be competitive, and we're not setting some school districts up at a disadvantage, which I think the current funding mechanism has done.
Gotcha.
The
Mr. Ehrhard, your
answer is
reaction.
simple. All you do is, if you want to fund your schools, you increase funding to schools. It's just the will to make it happen. We talked about the convention center. There's a few $1 billion that is totally unnecessary. That money, can you imagine putting that money back in Chapter 70 school aid? Can you imagine how that would change the dynamic in our towns? How it would cut property taxes? But Beacon Hill doesn't get it, and they don't care. The simple answer is give more money to the schools to cover the costs.
Like with the Boston Convention Center thing, I know that consider the amount of representation out of the greater Boston area.
Of course.
That's the thing. You have, X amount of people pushing for this, and they can push things through because of the population, because the number of representatives. It's a numbers game. So how do you work to convince folks to not allocate money towards those things and increase things?
It's about leadership.
Like education.
It's about dialogue. Remember, I spend my days as a lawyer trying to advocate for those who are going under. I mean, people come to my office, they're about to lose their house. Electricity's been shut off. I am the last hope they have against Bank of America, National Grid, Chase. They have nowhere else to go. I have spent my entire career, lost a lot of hair, fighting these banks, and we always win, because we are able to come from a position of strength. They know if they do not work with me, I'm going to put it in bankruptcy and work through the banking system, and I'm going to win. As a state senator representing these rural districts, you have an increased responsibility to be an advocate, an increased responsibility to be a vigorous advocate. Boston can get together. When you're out here, you have to be louder than everyone else and more effective in your argumentation. We talk about regional school districts. We have more regional school districts out here than you see probably in all of the Boston area.
Definitely.
Yet they say regionalize, we'll give you 100% school funding. They never do it. So what can one man do? He is just one person. But he has to be able to articulate from a position of strength. I mean, that I will be there on the Senate floor, the one that they're at 2 o'clock in the morning trying to hold this thing down until we can get some compromise. Look what the Leo just did with that gun bill. They require every school to have a school resource officer. Who's going to pay the $70,000 for that police officer? As Michael said, Tantasco, we have a union within there, 6 different school districts. Does that mean we have an office in Brimfield Elementary, Holland? Of course not, but the law doesn't say. And Boston doesn't care. Can you win every battle? No. But the answer to school funding problems is this: fund the schools. When your budget goes up by 38% in 8 years, there's no increase in school aid, that's not a lack of money. It's a lack of will, it's a lack of commitment. And it shows that legislators in Boston care about their pet projects. As a state senator out here, you must vocalize and be more of an advocate and a greater leader than the Boston senators, because you're out here by yourself. And I have shown time and time again in my career, I'm the one guy. I've had these cases where I've been in court. I walk in Worcester, West Springfield. I'm one lawyer. The bank brings 6 lawyers. And there I am, 6 versus 1. And time again, I'm ready for those types of battles. And I've shown that throughout my career.
We're going to move on to another topic.
Before we do, this is a very important thing, and I need to make a point here.
Certainly.
You asked the question about how can you be effective in getting things done for Western and Central Massachusetts when the numbers are not with you.
Yeah.
Well, the way you can't be effective is to be an obstructionist and a rigid ideologue who is so concentrated and fixated on a rigid ideology and a rigid litmus test that they're not willing to build partnerships and to build relationships with people in an effort to get things done for their constituency. I have a track record of working with people across the aisle. I was chairman of my Board of Selectmen for a number of years. My vice chair was a Democrat. I'm chairman of the Tantascwa School District. My vice chairman's a Democrat. And in both cases, I've created relationships and I've found common ground on areas that folks are concerned about. You don't agree on every issue. You're not supposed to. Democracy works best when you debate. Democracy works best when you have a discussion. But you have to build consensus. You have to build bridges. And you have to do what's in the best interest of the people you represent. And that means working together.
But I have to respond. I don't think
All right,
I don't think it's rigid ideology to say you need to give more funding to schools. It's not rigid ideology. It's just the fact they won't do it. We had a senator who was chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. We still saw no increase in school aid. Consensus building, par excellence, is not going to change Boston legislators' ability to ignore us. On the Tantascwa School Committee, I hear what Michael says. We worked together on that. But I was the leader, along with two other members, who built coalitions to fight against increased spending, fight against union contracts. So when Mike says we work with Democrats, they work with Democrats because they had to. We were able to build numbers to say we're not going to vote for this budget. We're going to stand our ground and wait till the next meeting. Our Democratic colleagues, who we all got along with, were very friendly. They voted with us because they put them in a position where they had nowhere else to go. It was a committee of 18. We were able to build 5 members, 7 members, 8 members. So that we knew when we came to meet on a budget that we had the votes to stand our ground. We built coalitions, we built consensus, but that was built because they had to. And if we think we're going to go to Boston and DeLeo and Rosenberg are going to work with us because we're friendly and we're building consensus, sure, we're going to work together. But we must have the numbers to make them work with us. I've seen time and time again in court and mediations, unless you come from a position of strength, they're not going to work with you. And if they think they're going to work, we had the kindest state senator you could ever have, a hard-working man. He's earned his retirement. But even in his position, we saw no increase in school aid. We have to change the way we have these dialogues.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we're getting close to running out of time. One thing I did want to touch on before we part for the day, just tell me why the district, briefly, why the district would be better served by you than Democratic State Rep Ann Goby, who's also running to replace Senator Brewer. And Mr. Valanzola, we can start with you.
Great, I appreciate it. The differences are very clear, and the differences come down to experience. My experiences aren't in the courtroom. They're not in the legislature. I'm not a lawyer. I think we've got enough lawyers up on Beacon Hill. 1/4 of the legislature are attorneys, and they sit up there and they work and they try to protect their own parochial interests, and then they pass laws that the next day they're going to have to defend. I think it's a conflict of interest. My experiences have been in the real world, in the private sector, working with folks in the private sector to create value and opportunity and to create jobs for the people of the Commonwealth. But my experiences have also been in the municipal sector, where I'm the only selectman in this race, the only person in this race that's chaired a regional school committee. I've been on the receiving end of Beacon Hill's rigorous and inactive policies, and I've seen how they are detrimental to not just the business community, but to our own home communities. So the simple answer is, why am I best served to be your next state senator? Because I'm one of you, because I've walked in your shoes, because I understand what it's like to struggle, because I'm the first person in my family to have graduated from college, and because I've worked hard for everything I've gotten, and because I can emulate with the very people of our district, because I'm one of you.
On Mr. Ehrhard.
Well, the answer is, why would I be a better state senator for this district than Ann Goby? Well, it's because a question of what is best for the district. I have spent my entire career, not in the courtroom, I spent my entire career advocating for those who have no one else to advocate for. I see, not in a selectmen's meeting or necessarily in a school committee meeting, what happens when you increase taxes or you put the tolls back up. I see families who come in tears because they can't pay their bills. They can't pay their mortgage. So if any candidate's on the ground, it's me. Every day, in every way. Just this morning, I had 2 new clients who are about to lose their house. I'm going back to Worcester at 3 o'clock to meet with a family whose electricity is being shut off in 2 days. That's understanding what people are going through. Understanding that every tax increase, every regulatory increase affects families. So when it comes to having a senator who can advocate for you, I'm the only candidate here who has to go home to 3 little kids at night. My wife works hard to make sure the home fires are burning. I know what it's like to have to raise a family. I know what it's like to have to pay a mortgage in the house that I live in. I'm the one candidate who actually every day goes through the struggles everyone else does. A family, a wife, a house I have to pay for. And I'm the only one who runs a business. Michael's a good friend of mine here on the school committee, but he's taken a 5-month leave of absence to run for office. The average family in my district cannot take 5 months to run for state senate. I go to work every day. I go to work every day to keep my business running and run for office. I'm the candidate who has his feet on the ground, his hands out there working with the common man to understand what they're going through. So when I say advocating for cutting taxes, I know when you increase taxes, people lose homes. And my job every day is to save those homes. And as a state senator, not only will I work to save homes in my job, but I'll work to save homes as a state senator.
All right, and gentlemen, I want to thank you both for your passion and for your desire to serve the Commonwealth. And thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Robert.
And come back to us. We will be continue our 2014 Campaign Roundtable series all throughout the month of August to bring you the candidates and the information you need to make an informed decision in September. So thank you again, and no matter who you vote for, make sure you get out and vote.
This forum and others like it throughout the election season will be available online at CBS3Springfield.com, MassLive.com, and full coverage in the Republican newspaper and on New England Public Radio. Thanks for watching.